Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Welcome in on a Friday morning. No football. It's not a football Friday. We got another week to the Super Bowl, the last game for months. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to talk some basketball today. Jared Calhoun scheduled to join us later in the show, Utah State basketball coach. Big game on CBS with the Utah State Aggies and the San Diego State Aztecs at 11 o'clock. And then you can grab a little lunch, and at 2:30, it's BYU in Kansas. A.J. Debonsa, Darren Peterson, possibly the 1 and 2 picks in the NBA draft going head-to-head. Can BYU beat Kansas for the third year in a row? So got some good basketball on Saturday. We'll start off this morning with a little bit of hockey as the Mammoth nearly had a great road trip. They'll have to settle for a good one, but a bitter taste in their mouth as they blow a 4-2 lead in the last 2 minutes. They give up 3 goals in the final 2 minutes and lose in regulation, don't even salvage a point, and lose 5-4 at Carolina. So definitely not leaving this road trip with an exclamation point. Now, before they played yesterday, we had on our guy, Cole Bagley, who covers the Mammoth for KSL Sports, to talk about the team, the road trip, but also some of the key players that are powering it now and what's going to be like when Logan Cooley comes back and how are the lines going to be arranged. So ignore all the optimism about the final game on the road trip because that didn't work out. But nonetheless, I think really interesting about when. Well, I think when is clear, but how they're going to integrate Cole Bagley, how they're going to balance these lines, and really how they're going to use these lines because their third line looks like it's a lot better than most teams' third line. So plenty to talk about. Here's Cole Bagley with PK and I on the Zone. In basketball, a lot of people really hang on point differential and say as things shake out, you follow point differential. And baseball people tell you run differential also. Do you believe that goal differential is a really good indicator of how things will break going forward? You know, it's maybe you get a break here or there and win big or lose big, but will it really shake out? And I ask that because right now the Mammoth have the third best goal differential in the Western Conference. So I'm wondering, are they just much better and we're going to see them just keep charging through the rest of the schedule?
Yeah, I don't know about charging. It's tough to do what they're doing for the next, I think there's 28 games left. But I sat down with Bill Armstrong before the most recent homestand, before they had won 6 out of 7 and gotten points in all of those. And, we had kind of talked in depth about, what was going on. And, that was kind of before they had really corrected things. And, he had pointed out that, look, in a lot of key statistical areas, we're in the green. And obviously one of those is, goal differential. They're actually the only team in the Western Conference currently in the wild card race that has a positive goal differential. Not just positive, but they're plus 21. Every other team in the wild card race is in the red. And so, he had kind of talked to me and said, look, we've actually been playing pretty good hockey. We just haven't necessarily had puck luck. We've made a few mistakes during key moments, and they lost a lot of one-goal games. Well, now, but at the same time, he said, look, if we can just continue to play the way that we are, eventually all those numbers in the green are going to catch up, and we're going to start winning some hockey games. And that's exactly what happened, right? They won 6 out of 7 at home. They've been really successful on this road trip. And so, again, I don't know that they're going to win 80% of the games down the stretch, but if they can win, 55 to 60% of what's left, that will nearly, if not for sure, guarantee that they make the postseason.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. How about the changes that the Bears made into lines? It seems like they shuffled some guys around, and that is another reason, along with that maturity that you say, as far as leading to the success. Could you speak on that?
Yeah, it's been a year where there's been a lot of line changes, and that's because this team was just trying to consistently figure it out. And when it comes to coaching, at the end of the day, they're not really going to change their scheme. But what the coach can do, the number one thing he can do is he can change up the lines, right? He can see if he can't get a spark on, all the lines or 2 of the lines or what have you. And so, the most recent changes that he was able to put together, I think have yielded these results. putting Lawson Krause up on that top line of Nick Schmaltz and Clayton Keller, that added physicality, that added net front presence has really, allowed those three to thrive together because, Schmaltz and Keller are more of kind of facilitators and they work really well together, but they're not necessarily always driving towards the net. They're not big bodies, but then you get, a big rig like Lawson Krause in there who's about 6'3", 6'4", and he has done a magnificent job at getting in front of the net, crowding the crease, battling in the dirty areas, and helping that line to reload. And then you go down from there, that second and third lines. First when they first changed them, when they dropped Gunther to the third and they put Daniil Boot up to the second, there was kind of a lot of questioning, not only from the fans, but kind of throughout the league when people started to see that. I remember when I tweeted it out that people were like, oh, what's going on in Utah? It's a shame that Dylan Gunther has to play outside the top six. But again, it was a stroke of brilliance because, when Bear explained it, and I even talked to Gunther about it, and they weren't really concerned about top six. It didn't matter who was on the second, who was on the third. This team just wanted to win hockey games. And so to have that attitude, for Gunther to have that attitude to drop down, down to the third, but he was playing with Jack McBain. And again, there was some brilliance there because that second line, which is Gunther, Hayton, and Peterka, lacked physicality. They lacked size. Well, then you switch Boot up to that second. You gave that line exactly what they needed. And the same thing with the third. It was Carcone, McBain, and Boot, a little bit, not too much physicality, but not enough speed, not enough creativity. Well, you drop Gunther down there, and that's exactly what he's done. So, it was just a combination of games that really complement each other, and I think that has yielded these incredible results over the last month.
Isn't it also true that the head coach can control? I mean, there are chances starting into periods and you get the TV timeouts in the middle of stoppage where you can slide more ice time to the top six. But if you've truly got depth all the way across the three lines, if the coach deploys the guys a little differently over the course of the game, can't you wear people down and create some really good matchups because everybody's got to play the third line at some point, and you make sure no matter when they do it, you have a strong line out there against them?
Yeah, I mean, I think Utah takes pride in all of their lines, being formidable opponents on the ice. Your third line is definitely going to be more of your checking line, but then, you add Gunther to it, and suddenly they're not just, suffocating you on the forecheck, but they're also putting dangerous opportunities on your net. So, yeah, I mean, the coach definitely has the ability to do that. And, he's always, no matter who it is in the NHL, that, the coach is going to be strategic in who's on the ice at what time. And, I mean, a lot of times your third line is going to get, quality minutes, against the top or second line of the other team because that's exactly what they're trying to do is wear those guys down.
What do they do when Cooley comes back?
That's a good question because this team is just playing so well. But I think, Cooley, he's a top six type guy. But where do you slot him? Do you replace Barrett Hayton on the second line with Logan Cooley, but then you're faced with the decision of, well, where do you put Barrett Hayton? Because you're not going to take Lawson Krause off the top line because he's playing so well with Keller and Schmaltz. You're not going to take Jack McBain off the third line, and you're not going to take Evan Stemlin off the fourth. Like, those guys have just played so well in those positions. So it's going to be tough. I would, if I had to guess, I'd probably say that they slot him into the top six, probably on the second line. I think it would make the most sense for him to then center that line. But luckily, I don't have to make those decisions, and we'll see what Bear ends up doing.
Well, it's just 4 games now in 8 days before we hit the 3-week Olympic break. So have you circled February 25, Colorado, the return to action for the team after the Olympics, as Cooley's return from injury?
Yeah, I think at this point, there's really no reason to bring him back before the Olympics. Again, going back to that conversation I had with Bill Armstrong a couple of weeks ago, he kind of broadened Cooley's return table to, he said he could come back either before or after the Olympics. And I think the reason that he said that was, in case things weren't going, really the way that they had envisioned or hoped is, if you start to get into some trouble, if you start to kind of bleed points and you're not in the standings exactly where you want to be, yeah, you probably rush Cooley back a little bit early to try to help things out, to try to, right the ship. But the way that they've played, over the last month, and especially on this road trip, picking up four points. It's already a success. We'll see what happens tonight. But, in my mind, there's really no reason to bring him back until after the Olympic break because if you do that, you give him a full almost 12 weeks to get healthy. And, even though the NHL technically takes a 2.5-week break, the players that are not participating in the Olympics, they're only getting about a week off, and then the team will return and they'll do almost kind of like a mini little training camp. And so that to me is when it would make the most sense to bring Cooley back, to give him about a week and a half to reacclimate, to get with the guys, to go through some practices. But that doesn't mean that something else couldn't happen. It's the National Hockey League, and as Bill Armstrong has told me, in this league, it's to expect the unexpected. So we'll see. But like I said, I wouldn't anticipate that we see him until after the Olympics.
We know Vejmelka's the guy on the back end. How comfortable are you with the depth there?
In Vanacek?
Yeah.
It's been an interesting season for Vitek. I like that Utah only signed their backup to a 1-year deal because it was kind of a contract that goes, all right, we're going to give you a chance now, prove it to us. And I don't know that it's necessarily gone the way that has put Vanacek in a position that that they're going to bring him back this next season. But to his credit, he has been put. I think his record right now is 2-9-2.
3-9-2 with that win. 3-9-2.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
3-9-2. He lost 10 games in a row. But again, I don't know that. I'd say that only half of those or maybe 4 of those were really his fault. A lot of his appearances kind of fell on back-to-backs or, circled losses and nights where the team just kind of really let him down. But the other night you saw what he can be capable of, the way, if the defense in front of him is playing the way that they should. And to be honest, 2 of those goals against Florida were definitely on the defense as Ian Cole, gave up a turnover right in the low slot, and then Sean Dursey lost the puck near the net as well. So I don't know. It's tough. He hasn't obviously produced the way that you'd hope a backup would, but I don't know that it's completely and entirely his fault as he hasn't played much. And again, his appearances have fallen on just bad nights, off nights, back-to-backs. With that being said, if this team does make the postseason, I would anticipate that Vejmelka is going to play the vast majority, if not all of those games, once they enter the playoffs.
His goals against average is 2.93, and his save percentage is about 88.5. Is that good enough for a backup? Where should a backup goaltender's numbers be for those areas?
Yeah, usually you want to see him into like the 8-9s. That's going to give you a really good chance to rip off wins when you have to put your backup goaltender in. His save percentage isn't terrible, nor is his goals against, but it's the fact that, he's only won 3 out of, 16 games, 15 games. That's where it's tough, is he just hasn't fully stepped up in those moments where, you would hope that he's at least winning 50% of his games if he's going to play that few.
Yeah. In that streak you talk about, though, they lost to Colorado. They lost in Denver. They lost 1-0 to certainly the best team in the West and arguably the best team in the league. Maybe they fattened up against a Western Conference that doesn't have as much depth. But either way, in a 2-0 shutout loss in Calgary, there were chances where he played well enough and they defended well enough to break the streak. But, this last win is the first time that he's played in a game where they scored 4 goals.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I said. Like, I just don't think that I'd say half of those losses were probably on him and the other half just weren't. That 1 goal loss to Colorado, you couldn't have asked for anything more. He gave you every chance in that game, to win it. But if you can't score goals, it doesn't matter how good your goalie plays. If you can't put the puck in the back of the net, you're not going to win those. So, yeah, he's had good flashes. I do think he is a good goaltender, but he just hasn't really found his stride. And maybe this win against Florida will do that. That's his former team. He won a Stanley Cup with them a year ago. And, a lot of the guys had commented that they really wanted to win that game for him. to help him get it done. And he was really happy the other night. So, sometimes all it takes is to get a win when you really need one, and then you can get into a stride.
All right, there's Cole Bagley from late in the show yesterday. We'll take a break. When we come back, we get to the post-game show and dive into how it all went wrong for the Mammoth at Carolina. That's next. Stay with us. Good morning, DJ and PK. It's 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Well, the Utah Mammoth lose to Carolina in dramatic fashion. Really, just unreal. It's only happened 3 times in NHL history that a team has had a 2-goal lead with 2 minutes left and lost in regulation. Giving up 3 goals in those final 2 minutes. Happened 30 years ago, and before that, you have to go back to like the 1930s. So it was a epic and historic collapse for the Mammoth. Let's get to the best of the postgame show.
DJ and PK, the Utah Mammoth fell 5-4 to the Carolina Hurricanes on Thursday night in Raleigh to wrap up their road trip with a 2-2 record, but that's not what they're thinking about right now. They had a 4-2 lead with under 2 minutes left before the Hurricanes stormed back. It all started to go south with a double minor for high sticking on the Mammoth with 5:18 left to go in the third period. Utah up by a pair, but Carolina didn't score until over 3 minutes in to that 4-minute power play, and they got a 6-on-4 goal, made it 4-3. 32 seconds later, tied it up with a 6-on-5 goal, and then won it with just under 30 seconds left on a 5-on-5 goal after Utah took a 4-2 lead into the third period on a Michael Carcone goal, his 11th of the year, and Utah was in a good spot until that penalty. It was a contest that they fell behind early in, as Carolina, just over 3 minutes into the game, made it 1-0 off a Utah turnover. Mammoth killed a penalty early in the second and then started a stretch of 2 goals in 4 minutes and 14 seconds from Kyler Yamamoto to take the lead.
Yamamoto rings it off the iron and scores! Kyler Yamamoto with a laser beam from the high slot, and we're tied at 1.
So Kyler Yamamoto, who had a 3-point night to get the road trip started on Saturday as Utah beat the Predators 5-2, gets the scoring started for Utah there. On Saturday, he was filling in for a sick Lawson Krause. The last 2 games, filling in for Dylan Gunther as Utah's top goal scorer, out day-to-day with an injury. But he filled in for him admirably and got that first goal for Utah to tie it, and then he got the second goal for Utah 4 minutes and 14 seconds later.
Sean Walker, now the Mammoth have numbers again. Pass across. DeSimone shoots. Rebound, they score! Knocked in by the Mammoth, and Yamamoto has a pair.
Yamamoto, the 9th Utah skater to record a 2-goal night so far this season. Carolina got one back on the power play late in the second, but 19 seconds later, J.J. Peterka gave Utah the lead heading to the third.
This is his second stint, third overall season. Whoa, there's a shot. The Mammoth get it right back. J.J. Peterka puts Utah back in front. Peterka makes it 3-2, 19 seconds after Carolina tied the game.
So you knew with Carolina having the 4th best record in the NHL and a home record of 18-8-2 entering the contest on a night where you scored 3 goals off of tough mistakes by them, that the third period was going to be a challenge, but Utah'd get the first one. They forced another turnover, and that would be Michael Carcone's 11th to make it a 2-goal lead for Utah, their first 2-goal lead of the evening.
This Carolina team, so dangerous offensively. Now they turn it over. McBain across, shoveled in, and they score. This time it's Carcone. Yamamoto created the turnover. McBain had the primary assist, setting up Michael Carcone's 11th goal of the year.
And then, as we said, things kind of fell apart in the final 2 minutes. Utah, the 3rd team in NHL history to have a 2-goal lead in the final 2 minutes of regulation and lose it in regulation. But they do finish the road trip 2-2. Talked about it before. What are the expectations for a trip like this? And a split would have been easily taken by the Mammoth. Just not maybe if we knew we were going to give up a 2-goal lead in the final 2 minutes of the final game to settle for that split. Let's hear from Captain Clayton Keller post-game after this one.
I don't know if you have just, a word or definition to describe that game, but overall, your thoughts?
I don't know. I thought we got better as the game went on. We seemed to kind of be in control, and we were able to, play our style as the game went on, but obviously the finish sucks. It hasn't really sunk in yet. We got to learn from it.
Those 2 final minutes, I guess, what did you see in terms of the breakdown and how they were able to come back?
I don't know. I think, we're a good team. We knew they were going to have a push. I think, we called the timeout. We said the right things. Bear said, the right things, in the timeout of, just we're good, and we agreed. And, it sucks to lose like that. I felt like we were in control, most of the game.
What do you want your team to take away from this and move forward with putting this behind you?
You got to learn from it. You got to, play all the way until the end and not let it happen again. I think simple as that.
When it comes to dealing with pressure, though, throughout this game, when the team was battling well against Carolina's pressure, what were the elements that you guys liked out of your game?
Yeah, I think, once we settled in, we were supporting the puck. We had bump back to speed. We had more communication as the game went on, and I think that's some things that we did good.
How do you ensure that something like that doesn't happen again?
Talk about it, watch the video. It's on all of us and to take accountability for it, and we'll learn from it. We'll be better from it.
Tough outcome, but Yamamoto has 3 points tonight. What does it say about his character and the way that he's carried himself this season and to come in tonight?
Yeah, he's such a great player. He can play anywhere in the lineup. He's super smart. He's got a good hockey IQ, and that's something that you can't teach, and he has that. So he's a great player in our lineup. Like I said, he can do it all, and we're really lucky to have a guy like him.
I know it's a tough road trip. You guys played some really tough teams, and it's not a consolation, but you still walk away 500. Is there anything you guys can take away from that going home?
Yeah, for sure. I think 500 solid. It sucks, we lost tonight. But a couple more games before the break. So I think that's, like I said, we'll learn from it and look forward to, those next ones at home.
So Utah holding down that first wildcard spot in the Western Conference now 28-22-4, 10-3-1 in January. They'll wrap up the first calendar month of 2026 on Saturday night at the Delta Center when they host the Dallas Stars. Let's hear from Kyle Yamamoto now on that 3-point night after this one. Finishes with 2 goals and an assist.
Rather your 2 goals in the second, but, the final few minutes, what did you assess from what happened?
Yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of things just unfortunately broke down. Their crowd behind them, they were rocking. And I think we got to, be able to calm ourselves down and, think right. But I don't really know what happened, to be completely honest. That's a good team over there. Good praise to them too. But, I think there's a few things we could probably sort out.
When it comes to the chemistry that your line had, you guys contributed a lot of goals tonight. What were you seeing when you guys were playing at your best?
No, those guys are great to play with. Hard working, fast. They both can make plays. So I think I play the same type of game as them. So just being able to play with them, second game. So obviously the chemistry's building a little bit, but no, it was fun. When
it comes to just facing really tough opponents, what can you learn from this game and this road trip moving into the rest of the regular season?
Never quit. Obviously there's 4 minutes left. They scored 3 to take the win from us. So never quit.
How do you make sure that this one stings but doesn't harm your confidence moving forward?
No, I don't think so. I know we'll bounce back from this. I know that's a fluke for us. I don't think we're going to be giving up 3 goals in the last 4 minutes too many times, if not again. But I think going forward, just stay positive and keep working.
What's been your mindset this season as you've been in and out of the lineup, but played more this year as opposed to last year and contributed in games like this?
Just try to play my game. Don't do anything too crazy. Step in when I need to. If they don't want to play me, they don't want to play me. So
you look at the split on the road trip, the record in January, but all Utah was thinking about after this contest was just how this one got away. And here's what head coach Andre Cherney said after the game.
Obviously, this is really disappointing. I think we were exactly where we wanted to be. Penalty, kill the first 2, then give a goal on the back door. We should have more awareness in that. And then after, I felt we had no pace, and that's what made us successful. throughout the game. It's the pressure we had in the puck here, and we became really passive at 6-on-5 and even at 5-on-5 after. And they did what they should do when they don't have pressure.
Is there something specific you noticed before the passiveness that kind of led into that final few minutes?
No, I think start with the PK, and for sure when they put it in and after we were too, it's what we always talk about being, you want to be patient, but you don't want to be passive, and we became passive and we paid for it.
The Carcone, Yamamoto, McBain line obviously contributed a lot tonight. The positive from them, what did you like out of their line?
Yeah, they were good. They generate good offense. They were good throughout the game.
Moving forward, what do you want your team to take from this going forward?
They're just what I said. If you stop having pace, you're screwed.
And when it comes to facing tough teams on this road trip, how would you assess this group did over these 4 games?
Doesn't matter. Matters we had the lead with 5 minutes to go by 2 goals and we lost the game, and we cannot accept that.
What was your message during the timeout?
Message was to stay calm. I felt we were on our heels. We're a good team, and we were playing well until then. So we had no reason to feel on our heels like that.
How do you make sure it stings but doesn't fully harm your confidence?
We'll figure that out. We'll let it sting for now, and we'll figure it out tomorrow.
Mammoth will fly home today, take on the Dallas Stars tomorrow. They beat Dallas, who had the 3rd best record in the NHL, just over 2 weeks ago. 2-1 was the final in that game. They'll look for their 2nd win over Dallas this month. Coming up tomorrow at 7 o'clock, we'll be on the air at 6 p.m. right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone with Hockey Night in Utah. And we're talking all about it on today's edition of Mammoth Daily. No doom and gloom on Mammoth Daily. We'll briefly hit on Carolina. We'll look ahead to Dallas. I'll give Mike a quiz on the road because Utah does not go back on the road again until March. How about that? Then our local hockey roundup will tell you who won the state championships in Utah high school hockey on Wednesday night, along with a look at Utah's version of the Beanpot tournament in college hockey. So Mammoth Daily, no doom and gloom there, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Utah Mammoth YouTube page, Mammoth Plus, and SCG Plus. DJ and PK, have a good weekend. We'll talk to you on Monday.
Well, the Mammoth are coming home. They'll have to lick their wounds after giving away a couple of points there in Carolina. Hopefully that doesn't come back to haunt them. And we'll see how they handle these final few games. I guess they'll have 3 home games now before the Olympic break, and they'll have 3 weeks off. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to switch gears and look ahead to BYU and Kansas with Matt Tait, who covers the Kansas Jayhawks, covered Jayhawk basketball for a long time, has an interesting perspective. He'll join us next for the little preview of the top 2 players in the country as far as NBA draft people think. A.J. DeBonsa, Darren Peterson. You got to put Cam Boozer in there, but those guys have been identified as the top 3. At least 2 of the top 3, maybe the top 2. We'll see how it plays out. Going head-to-head this weekend. We will talk with Matt Tait about the big game Saturday afternoon next. DJ PK, and we're joined now by Matt Tait, covering the Kansas Jayhawks for R1S1 Sports. It's BYU at Kansas Saturday afternoon, 2:30 on ESPN. Number 13 and number 14. And there's a decent chance that those are the top 2 picks in the NBA draft squaring off. Matt, good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Good. I guess the question is, when I say the top 2 picks in the draft are going to square off, are they really going to square off? Is Peterson going to play? Because Darren Peterson's played 10 of the 20 games. He's had a couple injuries. What are the odds this Saturday?
Yeah, very, very high. He rolled his ankle against Colorado 2 games ago. Finished that game though after he rolled it and looked okay, and then. They played at K-State after that a few days later. I thought he was going to play in that game just because it's a rivalry, just because, that'll be the only chance he gets to play in Manhattan anyway against K-State. So I was a little bit surprised, but I think maybe from the minute it happened in Colorado, the idea was let's make sure he's ready for this one. Number 1, KU needs him to have a chance to beat BYU. Number 2, they probably knew then that College Game Day was coming, and ESPN needs them to have a chance to have the ratings that they could have with that matchup. And number 3, the rest of the college basketball world, those of us who cover it, fans who watch it, everybody else deserves it. So I think it was probably sort of pointed to from the very beginning after he rolled that thing, like, we can sit him one game, let's give him the full rest, let's get him to 100% so he's ready for that one.
Well, they've had some success with him, obviously, and they've had some success without him. But what should we be looking for? Because Bill Self said he's not a doctor, but he does expect him to play. He's thinking that he's going to play. So with that in mind, when we turn on that television, what should we be aware of when we watch this young man play?
Just as far as his game goes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that stands out to me is you know, you hear about a guy who's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft or number 2, whatever it is. And you hear about a guy who can score, and you hear about a guy who, you know, has the all-around game and all the comparisons that he's drawn to past, you know, freshmen, to past high school seniors, whatever. But then you watch him, and he's just about basketball, man. I mean, he doesn't hog the ball. He doesn't hunt shots. He doesn't have to be the focal point. He is a basketball player through and through. And so it's possible that it could surprise you some because he's not afraid to defer. He's not afraid to let his team play ball and run and be a part of that rather than being the whole show. And that's true to who he is. That's true to his character. That's true to his personality. He's really, really good with the ball in his hands, and he's really, really good at scoring. But he's also really, really smart, and he understands the game. And as much as he would love to put up 40, 50 points any night, he's the kind of guy that just wants to win. And whatever that means, sometimes he knows that means he's got to take shots and force the issue and be aggressive. Sometimes he thinks, you know, let me get my teammates involved. Sometimes he thinks, let me be a decoy and let them cook, and I'll just kind of hang out and draw some attention over here. So I think that, you know, while that's not one thing, I think it's something that people might be a little bit surprised about it, because you kind of do think of a guy with his pedigree and his hype as a guy who you're going to turn on the television and you might see him shoot 30 times. He might, but he doesn't have to do that. And you know, again, that's true to his personality. I've been doing this a long time, 25, 30 years, and covered a lot of one-and-dones and big-time players that came through KU, obviously, and the whole bit. And I don't remember as down-to-earth, humble, just team player, quality young man, quite like I've seen this guy, at least not from the one-and-dones. You know, there have been some really good guys that have come from Kansas and spent 3-4 years here and fan favorites and all that stuff. But this guy, man, I've been really impressed. He does not let the hype get to his head. He is not about look at me, look at me, look at me. He's just a ball player. And if he could play basketball 24 hours a day and didn't have to sleep, I think he'd do it.
Mm-hmm.
How do teams try to defend him? Obviously, he's an awesome talent, or we wouldn't be talking about, you know, getting picked 1, 2, 3 in the draft. Do they try to deal with him man up? Do they zone? What do they do?
Seen a little bit of everything. You know, if you've got a guy, and Baylor did, if you've got a guy that you think you can confidently put on him, you know, teams have not been afraid to try to let that guy win that matchup. But there's been a lot of crowding. There's been a lot of, you know, jumping ball screens and doubling him off of that. Just as much as anything, just trying to make him give the ball up, right? And so he's comfortable with all of it. I don't see him get rattled really ever. And again, to your point, we've only seen him play 10 games. So, and even in some of those 10, he only played a half or just over a half, you know. So it's not a huge sample size that we've seen, but I think we've seen enough to know that whatever teams try against him, he's willing to sort of dissect it and make the basketball play, right? He doesn't panic. He doesn't force things. He doesn't get out of character. He just, you know, if they're going to jump him on a ball screen and send 2 to him and crowd him and try to push him up the floor, well, he's going to look over the defense and realize that means somebody else is open and get the ball to where it needs to go quickly so they can get a bucket. So, doesn't mean it always works. Doesn't mean he's perfect or flawless or anything like that. I mean, he's got turnovers. He's forced shots. He's done, you know, things that all basketball players do. But I haven't seen just one approach to trying to defend him. If there is one, though, that I think you see most often, I do think it's that idea of crowding him, and trying to make him give it up.
Well, he's a sensational freshman. They got another freshman, a couple other freshmen, I should say, who play, a couple sophomores. But the thing that I like is a couple of senior guards in White and Council. I believe they're both seniors.
Right.
Looking at them, having been through it and all that stuff, you talk about getting old, they provide that experience. I have to think that they're providing the steadiness that the team needs. Could you speak to that?
There's no doubt about it. And a lot of that comes from when Darren hasn't played. I mean, when he was out, especially early in the season, when he was dealing with his cramps and his hamstrings, or hamstring, I guess, those guys had to step up. And I think that they being the Kansas basketball program and Bill Self specifically, I mean, they always kind of view that as long as we can get Darren back, this could be a good thing, because it forces those guys to assert themselves. It forces them to play a role that could be beneficial when they plug Darren back into the lineup. And we've seen the good and the bad of that. I mean, it took him, he started the first 6 games of conference play, and that was obviously a really good stretch after he missed so many in the non-conference. So, it was great to see them get him back, but it was also, there was a learning curve there. They've looked really good with him, and then they've looked, early on, there were times where they looked like they didn't know how to play with him. And I think that's natural. I think that's, any team would probably fall into that when you're adding a guy, especially a guy that talented. Guys have a tendency to throw him the ball and then stand around and watch. And it doesn't show up quite as much anymore. I think they've figured out, how they fit around him and how he fits with them and how it all clicks. They've still got work to do in that area, though. But Trey White and Melvin Council have been a huge part of that, with and without him. Each of those guys has carried this team on a given night to victory, and each of those guys has done it with Darren on the bench and with him in the lineup. And so there's a lot of trust between those two and the rest of the team. There's a lot of trust between Darren and those guys. None of them look at it like, oh my gosh, I'm playing with this superstar. Don't get me wrong. They think Darren's as talented a player as they've ever played with. There's no doubt. But, he's just one of them. He's one of their teammates. And so, again, that's a credit to Darren and his maturity. And again, he's fine. If Melvin Council is going to go score 36 points and help you beat North Carolina State, making 9 3-pointers, Darren didn't walk away from that game frustrated. He scored 17. He did his part, but that was Melvin Council's night. It was a big win for KU, and Darren was as happy for him as anybody. So I think that the time they spent without him really allowed Council and Trey White to figure out their importance and figure out what they need to be for this team. And then now that they've kind of had some time to play together, they all fit together pretty nicely, and they should, right? I mean, Bill Self, when he knew he had Darren coming in, a big part of his portal searching was, I want to find guys who fit around what Darren brings. I want to find guys who play the style we need and can do what they need to do offensively to fit with them, but also defensively. And so it makes sense. I mean, Bill Self's a Hall of Famer, and that's what he sought out to do when he built this team. So, for a long time, they didn't have the luxury of even knowing if that worked because Darren wasn't in the lineup. But as we've seen him in the lineup now, it does look like it worked. And this team's far from perfect, but they are hot right now. And you can definitely see that when they're whole and when everybody's understanding their role and playing well together, they're as tough out as anybody.
Matt Tait covers the Kansas Jayhawks for R1S1 Sports. He's joining us here to look ahead to Saturday afternoon's game at Kansas. And I'm curious because BYU has beaten Kansas the last couple of years. There is a time, not that long ago, when there'd be some seniors saying, we owe them. They beat us last year. But in this era, there's 2 freshmen playing big roles who obviously don't have any history. You got Council's on his 3rd team in 3 years. White's on his 4th team in 4 years. Is all that stuff just for the fans, and can they wind the team up, or it just doesn't matter?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because the K-State game last weekend in Manhattan was it's KU K-State. It's an in-state rivalry. It's big. K-State had beaten KU over there 3 in a row, and with inferior teams, and that's part of the beauty of college basketball, right? Those fans get up for that, those players get up for that, and K-State's had some success recently, but KU got them the other day, and in the post game, Coach Self talked about how, look, I get it. We try to preach to these guys that this rivalry matters, but it's really hard for it to matter to them when they haven't ever experienced it before. They're not from Kansas. They may never play in it again. The seniors certainly won't, right? And so, obviously they preach it and they want their players to understand it, but it's different when what you just said, 3-4 year seniors and juniors that have gone through it and been on that ride over their careers. But Self pointed out, to heck with the players. I'm the one that's got to live here. It matters to me. And so I made sure to tell them that if it matters to me, it damn sure better matter to you. And so that's sort of the new era way of doing that, right? It's not a personal thing to the players anymore because they don't have experience in it, but they can make it personal because it's personal to their coach, and obviously you want to make your coach happy whenever you can, right? So I thought that was really clever, and I don't think it was a gimmick or a shtick by any means. I think that's very much how Self views it and how he feels about it, and so this will be the same sort of thing. It's not the same kind of rivalry as an in-state rivalry that you've been playing for 100 years or anything like that. But Self remembers going out there last year and getting rocked. That game was ridiculous, right? 91-57 or something. It was not a good stretch. Not a lot of these guys were on that team. A couple were, but Bill was, and it was embarrassing for him. And so he's going to preach that, I'm sure, and has throughout the week. They've been off all week, so I'm sure he's reminded them that, we're Kansas. We don't get beat like that, and so this is personal to me, so let's find a way to get them back. And whether it works or not, maybe it works sometimes, maybe it doesn't other times, maybe it works every time. I don't know, but it's definitely the new way of doing it. And I was looking at BYU's roster before you called. I don't think there's very many guys on that team that were there last year either, right? I mean, maybe a couple, but it goes both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, what do you got, Saunders and Keita?
Right, yeah. Right, yep. And obviously Saunders was a big part of it. I mean, he had a great game, and they have a ton of respect for what he can do and how talented he is. So, he'll be the focal point in that regard, but obviously no one's going to be more of a spark and a spotlight on him than AJ.
Well, Matt, we're looking forward to the game. Thanks for coming on and giving us a little bit of a preview here and getting us ready for it. We appreciate it.
Yeah, sounds good. It should be a lot of fun. My number one thing for this game is I want them both healthy. I think they are. And I want the officials to not call a single foul on either guy, because let's let them play as many minutes as they both can.
I hate that.
This is what we need to see. We don't need either guy going to the bench with 2 fouls, 14 minutes mark of the first half.
I hate that.
Let's just swallow the whistles. The ESPN would love it. We would love it. The players would love it. It has to happen. So hopefully those guys can get a good whistle and put on a heck of a show, because they've done it. As you guys know, I mean, their matchups in high school were electric, and they're both capable of going for 40+. And I'm in, man. I think Allen Fieldhouse would be full if it was a one-on-one game and it was Kansas against BYU, but it was just the two playing full court one-on-one. I think they would still love it. So it should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it, and it's a shame they don't play twice this year. That's for sure.
Yep. Thanks, Matt.
All right, guys. Thank you. Take care.
All right, there's Matt Tait. When we come back, what is trending? The headlines are next.